welcome back to Pleasure Principles. I'm your host Sana, and today we are walking into a topic that a lot of people whisper about but rarely unpack with honesty. Well, we are talking about keeping love alive in a marriage when there is a significant age difference. Now, if we are honest, um, age gap relationships tend to get judged before they ever get understood. People make assumptions about power, money, motives, or how long it will last. But behind all those opinions, there are real humans building real homes, navigating energy levels, health changes, careers, family planning, and intimacy across different life stages. And listeners, my guest today knows a thing or two about navigating seasons of life. Judy Gaman is the CEO of Executive Medicine of Texas, an award winning author, speaker, and also host of the Stay Young America podcast. Her passion is helping people live longer and healthier, not just in their bodies, but in their relationships too. So, today we are going to look at love, desire, and long term partnership through the lens of age differences. Not to romanticize it, listeners, but just to tell the truth and pull out real tools couples can actually use. So, Judy, I'm so glad you're here with us. So, let's begin our conversation.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you so much for the invite.
Okay, so Judy, to begin with, when there is a big age gap in marriage, um, what are the most realistic challenges couples need to expect, instead of pretending that it will all just somehow work it out itself?
I think that the relationship evolves over time. When I married my husband, there's a 20-year age difference between us, and we were all much younger. I mean, he was in his 40s, and I was in my 20s, and that seems like so weird, right? Oh, that's strange. But it was kind of like where we were in life. I had been married really young. My first husband had gone off to a war, so then I had two children at that point. So I had a lot of life that I had kind of lived and experienced that a lot of maybe 24, 26 year olds haven't actually experienced. And I think that's one thing to really pay attention to with that age difference, even somebody who's considering marrying somebody who, is younger or older, is what is stage of their life are they in? And the irony was that we both had children that were the same age because he had many children, he has some younger children. So we had a lot in common from that aspect. And I think anyone who's facing the realities of having an age difference is that over time, the interest and the energy level changes. And I remember when I was first married, maybe when I was like 30, we'd had a child together at that point. And with 10 is a blended family, so there's 10 children altogether. And we had a very different life than kind of what we have now. Because at that point, my husband, Walter, was at the height of his career. He was growing a company and coming up with new ideas and new innovations and kind of doing some groundbreaking things that weren't being done in the space of medicine, especially not in primary care. And I was loving it. I'd gone back to school and, raising the kids and all of this, and we had a very, very busy, busy, busy life. But it was a good life. We kinda lived by the calendar. And then what has evolved over time, because now we've been married so long, and what has evolved over time is our children are grown, we have grandchildren, and we have a home that's much quieter. And now I am at that peak where I've got all these ideas and innovations and, I want to go, go, go. And he's kind of at that stage where, yeah, he still wants to do some things, but retirement's on the horizon.
Yeah.
And I think that's the main thing for somebody who is looking at either entering into a relationship, a serious relationship, marriage with someone with an age difference, or maybe they're in a marriage and there's an age difference. And that is that you just have to embrace those changes in both people, because obviously being a woman now in her 50s, that of course I changed, I went through menopause. I mean, there are a lot of things that happen in both the male and the female lives as we age. Every decade brings its own challenges, but not looking at the partner saying, "Well, you've changed." Well, guess what? So have you. It's both members of that marriage will change and evolve, and it's just embracing that change and seeing the beauty in it.
I love that, Judy. That is bold, that is practical. And I also think, what you are saying is that age gap couples, they almost need to run like, this early relationship audit, like energy levels, career timelines. Let's be real, health, and even life goals upfront. And that is something I think it becomes like this foundation of a healthy relationship. And that's what, exactly, I mean, personally, I would want. And Judy, one, I don't know whether it's a difficult question or not, but keeping in mind that, there are anyway a lot of social judgment and sometimes even pushback from family. It can be brutal. How does it become different, when um, the genders are reversed? For example, the wife is, senior or older than the husband. Do you think that the entire discussion or entire perception around it changes?
Well, I certainly have friends that that's the situation. I think that the age difference, a lot of us think that automatically that the younger person is going to be the female, but that's not always the case. It definitely can be the male, the husband that's the younger.
Mhm.
I think one of the challenges in that scenario that I've seen with friends that have been in that situation is the appetite, the sexual appetite and such of the husband at a peak age
Mm.
hitting around the same time that a woman is kind of going through, the change, and I think that's the most challenging part. But even with that, say you marry someone who is the same age, you say you're 2, 3 years difference between you, or you're exactly the same age. You're still gonna have challenges in your marriage, and you're still gonna evolve, you're still gonna change. It's not like just because you marry someone who's a similar age that that is going to solve the issue. And then it
Exactly.
also goes into a maturity thing. You could be the same age and enjoying the same things. But then as you evolve, one person matures maybe at a different rate. You see this a lot in guys who I call these you know, the boys, the men who are boys that haven't really grown up, the man child who may be still on video games and, it isn't really embracing, say, it, the family life or such because they haven't really matured quite yet into where the wife is who suddenly finds herself as being a mother and having all kinds of new responsibilities. You definitely see that. And it's not always the guy. It could be that the girl is really having a hard time losing her youth and saying, but I don't want to grow older. I still want to go out and do all these things. And those challenges are real in any marriage. It doesn't matter if there's an age difference or not. The level of which our energy's at, our beliefs, sometimes we see this in, even our spiritual evolution, you know, what somebody may find God or may have, some way that they're evolving that changes them quite a bit into a new person, and then the other person having to deal with that because we are human and we are creatures of reinvention. That's just who we are. And I think a lot of times that it's really about the principles of marriage,
Mm,
loving unconditionally, embracing new things, not feeling like if you change in any way, shape, or form that I can't adapt. I mean, that's a recipe for divorce. And
mm,
you have to be able to always assume that the other person is doing their best, but at the same time, you have to make sure that you're doing your best, because it's really easy to point the finger and say, "Well, if you only woulda done this," or "How come you aren't more like that?" And
yeah.
honestly, if we really took a really good look at ourselves, there's probably a lot of room for improvement within ourselves.
That is such an honest take, Julia. I 100% agree with this. I think the age or any other um factors or criteria like these, they are, I mean, yeah, realistically saying they're okay to discuss, but I think it's more about um the energy, the frequency here, and how realistically you are kind of, I mean, how exactly you are able to match with your partner in terms of different aspects of your life and their life as well. It's not just that my partner has to understand my um thoughts and opinions, but at the same time I do have to reciprocate as well. And I think that is something which I personally absolutely believe, I mean, irrespective of age or shape or anything. um and coming on to the desire and the physical aspect here, like when one partner is in a different life stage, physically or hormonally, how does that affect the sexual connection and desire in a long-term age gap marriage, Judy?
Well, I think there's a lot of things that you have to consider here. I'm the CEO at Executive Medicine of Texas, so we see a lot of people who are seeking to live, longer, healthier lives, or they're really into age management, or they see that their hormones are fluctuating. And there can be a myriad of reasons that your sexual desires change. And the old thinking and the wrong thinking is that, "Oh, I'm just not attracted to my spouse anymore." And a lot of people gotta go down that road, and then they decide to stray only to find out that now they found themselves in a conundrum because that wasn't the problem. They've created a nightmare for themselves, but that wasn't the problem. The problem sometimes can be health related. It can be anything from, you're on blood pressure medications. Well, that's causing erectile dysfunction, or your hormones, either male or female, your hormones are out of whack, and at that point, your desires are down, or maybe even sex is painful because hormone issues and such. So there are so many things to consider when it comes to that. And then a lot of times it can actually be psychological, and not from the sense of, "Oh, I'm not attracted to this person," but we get so busy. We get so busy in life that we don't even take the time to really kind of look at our spouse the way we used to when we were dating. And this is why couples can go on vacation and boy, they have the best sex of their life. And they're in love and they feel great. And then 2 weeks later they're back to the grind of their jobs and home life and all of the things that are going on. And they kind of get lost in that again. And I think this is really where the couples who make the efforts, we have date night at least once a week. We have really set out to, especially now that the kids are out of the house and we have more freedom, to have a number of vacations and getaways during the year. And even if you're not in a financial spot, to say, "Oh, well, we're going to take off to Europe," or "We're going to, go vacation somewhere where it's expensive. It doesn't have to be that. It could just simply be we're going to take a week off work. We're going to take our vacation time and we're going to have a little staycation. We're actually going to go to that museum that we've never been to. We're going to go out to a movie. We're going to actually have a picnic or something that you would do when you were courting, but you don't necessarily do when you're married. And really saying that, I'm going to put forth the effort in this marriage. I'm going to put forth not just the expectation of the other person, but I'm going to put forth that effort. Little love notes go a long way. My husband and I have I love this that we did this. We each designed a book that is where we exchange poems. And we literally have these leather bound books, and we've done this over holidays. And there's different occasions within there that we've either exchanged at the same time, like say Valentine's Day or such, or a milestone in our anniversaries or something like that. Or it could be that it's a particular birthday, and I'm feeling like I wanna write a poem to him about that. Or it could be, the birth of our first grandchild, or, some of these things. And we always laugh that we're gonna have to burn these poems before before we die, because some of them are just little mushy, and quite romantic. But that has just been beautiful that we've done that, and we can look back, and it kinda tells our love story. As we go back and read these poems, it kind of reignites all those feelings that we were feeling in the moment. And, maybe poem writing isn't, we never knew we were gonna write poems, but maybe you're thinking, "Oh, well, I don't wanna that's not my thing." It doesn't have to be that. It can be it could be anything that you share, that you have a little bit of a tradition. You have something that you're gonna look back on and say, "Oh, yeah, this tells our story." I think it's really important to embrace your story.
Absolutely. That is so, so, so true, Judy. I mean, that is something, in fact, for me as well, it's non-negotiable because um, leave, all the gifts and, all those, gestures. But I think one thing that you said, I think it's a keyword. It's like make an effort here. And it's not that, you are doing this for me, you're doing this for me, you are bringing me expensive gifts or something. But I think even if, it's an acknowledgement of something that you're doing out of love, taking out time, not only for wife or for just for husband, but each other, for each other. I think that is something, these small gestures or moments, they can make a huge difference. Maybe going through the old pictures or the messages, maybe those flirty messages or those exchanges like that. And they really, really reignite, they like not only emotionally, but energetically and physically as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. One thing that my husband did recently for me, and this is gonna sound like such a small thing, and it really is a small thing, but it had big dividends because it just warmed my heart so much. I was very, very busy, and I had an upcoming work flight, and I got an email, and it said about a week or so before, and it said your meal selection has been made. And I have to eat gluten free, so if I don't put in my meal selection on these longer flights, then, sometimes I just don't get to eat at all. And I looked to him and I said, "I just got this message on my phone. Did you, like, go into American Airlines and do my meal thing?" He said, "Yeah. Yeah, I know a lot of times you forget, and I wanna make sure you'd have something to eat." It just went so far for me. It really I'm still thinking about it, and I just thought, that's that's really what a partnership, what marriage is about. It's about thinking about that person doing something without having to be asked, and just really considering their well-being. And how can you improve their life even with the smallest thing, like making sure their meal on a plane is ordered properly, if they, if that's an issue for them. it doesn't have to be giant, and it doesn't even have to cost anything. It's something that's just a common courtesy or a, just, "I'm thinking about you, let me make your life a little bit easier."
Okay. I mean, I'm thinking like, keep him, girl, keep him. I mean, that is something, secretly I every day would yearn for. Oh, that's beautiful. That's beautiful, Judy. Okay, so anyway, so before we wrap up, I think this is something, connecting back to the aspect where there are pushbacks from society or sometimes family. And for couples, Judy, who, may feel like worn down by comments, or maybe judgment, from, let's say, family, sometimes kids, community. What's one boundary or script they can use to protect their relationship without starting like a family war?
I'm glad you're bringing this up because I think a lot of people face this.
Yeah.
I know when we got together, there was a lot of conversations that were had with him of, what does she want? She's so young. What does she want? There's gotta be a catch, why you have a lot of kids, what's in it for her? And, um, there's a joke that Walter and I have between ourselves where I said once, a lot of guys come with baggage, and I said, "I married Mr. Samsonite," and he jokingly said, "Nope, you married Louis Vuitton." That's how it was kind of a joke about how many kinda kids he brought into the marriage. But I think that, from my standpoint, the kickback was, "Do you know how many kids he has? Or do you realize what you're signing up for?" And it wasn't really something that I thought about. I never thought, "Oh, I can't marry this man because, oh gosh, we're gonna have all these kids and, what is life gonna be like?" It never really dawned on me because I was so in love with him, and I couldn't imagine my life really without him, and I know he felt the same way. I think there's a lot of judgment that comes in any marriage. People, have different ideas about why people are getting married, and sometimes people are super happy for you, sometimes they're not. I would say we had a mix. And I think there
Mhm.
were people betting against our marriage. Matter of fact, I know there were because we had people who 20 years later said to us, "You know, I totally misjudged this," and apologized. And that was refreshing, but I didn't need to hear it because I believed in this marriage. I believed that it was gonna be a very interesting but great ride, and
Yeah.
I know my husband felt the same way. I think when you get into age differences, when there's adult children in place, and this wasn't our case, but I know others that have had a very, rough go of it when there's been um, a successful parent, male or female, and then there's either a divorce or the spouse has passed away. So they're a widow or widower, and then they fall in love again. And in that case, there have been family members, and this is so painful. I hate that they had to go through this, but family members that came and had said, "Well, this is gonna screw up the will, and they just want what you have, and you better get a prenup," and, like, all of these things because I don't know if it's that they don't believe in true love, maybe they're miserable in their own marriage, maybe they're just looking out for their own best interest. I
Mhm.
I'm not sure what would spark all of those, although I can think of a lot of reasons that somebody would be that way. But I don't know why the first question isn't for the well-being of the mom or the dad. Does
Yeah.
this make you happy? That should be the very first question, I believe. And then, do you trust this person, and should we trust this person? Have those open, honest communications. And I don't know how it is where you are, but in a lot of places, there are laws that protect these late life second marriages. That's what wills are for. And that's what, a lot of protections that can be there. But if that's the first thing, if the first thing out of an adult child's life is is not, are you happy, to their parent, then they need to check themselves. They need to look at their motivation for why they're asking this. And and really, I think, have a little introspection, little self-reflection.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think a lot of couples, forget that you do not have to attend every argument you're invited to. I think sometimes the most loving thing, we can say is that, we have talked this as a couple. We have done the discussion. We have done our relationship audit. We are good. So let's change the topic, just short, clear, no drama. Yeah.
We have a rule in our marriage. This has saved us so much. We've taught this to a lot of our friends, and they use it now. And maybe you can use this one too. There's a rule in our marriage that if it's something that we knew before we got married, we're not allowed um, to start an argument about it. So this has come in really handy when my husband has said early on, "Do you really need another pair of shoes? Honey, you have like 50 pairs of shoes. Like, really?" And I just simply looked at him and said, "You knew that before you married me, that I love shoes. Like, so we cannot have this argument." He's used it when he takes off his socks and he leaves them all over the place. Used to drive me crazy. But he once just picked up his socks and said, "You knew this before you married me." It was true. I did know this. So I really believe in my heart of hearts that if you can stop and ask yourself, did I know this bit of information, this little tick that they have, this little habit that they have, did I know this before things got so, every day? So before things were less exciting, before when I used to think this was cute, did I know this then? And if the answer is yes, then you are not allowed to bring it up and definitely not allowed to have an argument over it because you went all in on that marriage knowing that information.
Exactly. Super. So I wish we could have go on and on, but in the interest of time, Judy, if our listeners, especially the couples, especially with age gaps, who are listening to this conversation, they would like to get in touch with you. They would like to share their thoughts. How would they do that?
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to go to judygaman.com. That's JUDYGAMAN.com, judygaman.com. That's my personal website. And if you're interested in executive medicine of Texas, you can go to emtexas.com. People fly into us from all over the globe, but it's emtexas.com.
Superb. Listeners, I'm going to have all the details in the show notes for you. So just refer to them along with this episode. And Judy, thank you so much for going there with us today. I loved that you did not glamorize age gap relationships and you did not shame them either. A very clear language, smart questions and takes, and a lot of compassion. So thank you so much.
It's been my pleasure.
So, listeners, there you go. You heard Judy Gaman on Pleasure Principles. And if this episode hit home, share it with someone who needs a more nuanced take on love and age gaps. Subscribe, leave a review, and let us know what topic you want us to unpack next. Until next time, I'm Sana. So, be kind to your body, honest with your heart, and gentle with the stories you tell yourself about love. Thank you.